These charges have just been unsealed in federal court here in Washington, D.C., Pamela, and I'll read you just what the documents say here at the top. Murder of these are charges that he is facing. Murder of foreign officials, causing the death of a person through the use of a firearm, discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence, and 2 counts of first-degree murder. These are the first federal charges now that have been filed against Elias Rodriguez, who is set to appear before a federal judge in the next few minutes. Now, this is his first appearance. We don't expect that he's going to enter a plea at this moment. And of course, this is an investigation, Pamela, as you know. This is still very early in the investigation that is still ongoing. There's still a lot more that investigators want to know about the suspect, about who he was in touch with over the last weeks and months, and whether there's anybody else who possibly could have been involved in this crime. And so those are still ongoing at this point. But clearly, over the last few hours, since last night and since the shooting deaths of these 2 people outside this event at the Capitol Jewish Museum, FBI and the Metropolitan Police here in Washington, as well as their counterparts in Chicago, have been digging into the background of Rodriguez, trying to make sure they know everything about him. And so these are the initial charges that we anticipate. There might still be more. One of the things that, of course, you heard from the Attorney General, you heard from FBI officials. One of the things they're focused on in particular is the hate crime aspect and anti-Semitism, clearly because he targeted this event that was being held by a Jewish organization here in Washington, D.C. So you can expect that they're going to keep pursuing that angle of this incident. And so it's quite possible that these charges may not be the final word on these charges that the suspect faces. Pamela?
All right, Evan, stand by for us. I'm going to bring back in Ellie and Catherine. You just heard Evan lay out that DOJ charged Elias Rodriguez with federal murder charges in connection with the death of those 2 Israeli embassy staffers. And Ellie, Evan noted that these are just initial charges and that there could be more. Tell us a little bit more about that, what your reaction is to these charges and why it takes time usually before a hate crime charge could be brought.
Yeah, so this all makes perfect sense. You start with the murder charge, you start with the firearms charges that we talked about because they're the most straightforward, because you don't necessarily at this point, just a few hours after the murder, have to prove the motive in order to bring those straightforward murder and firearms charges. This is just step 1. These charges will, in all likelihood, be contained in what we called a criminal complaint. Now, that'll be followed at some point in the coming weeks by an indictment. And at that point, that'll have given DOJ and FBI more time to investigate, to look into the motives and the planning. And I fully expect by that point, as Evan just said, they're looking at hate crimes. It certainly seems that hate crimes charges will be justified here. And we've seen FBI officials reference the possibility of terrorism charges. But I think it's a common and smart approach. You get the murder charges on the books. You get the firearms charges on the books. That's enough to arrest this individual. That will certainly be enough to keep him locked up with no bail. And then you work on the more complicated motive-based charges over the coming days and weeks.
What stands out to you, Catherine? Also help us understand the difference of a murder of foreign officials. That's one of the charges here. What that actually means, what the significance that carries.
Yeah, I think it's obviously there's the political implications of it, right? We have to be very careful to make sure that foreigners who are coming to our country are safe. Our responsibility, at the federal level, state and local level, is not just to our citizens. It's to anybody who's on our soil. And when we create a situation here where people don't feel safe to come, it has its own ramifications, whether they're political or commercial. But more importantly, I think it creates a fear amongst the community, a fear amongst the people living in our own country that we can't keep people safe. And we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to assure people that we can keep them safe.
Evan Perez, to bring you back in, you have more information, right?
That's right, Pamela. Now, going through the complaint here that's been filed in federal court, one of the things that stands out, we heard last night from the D.C. police that the suspect, after allegedly carrying out the shooting, stayed on the scene, went into the Jewish Museum, and so according to police, once they arrived at the scene, they actually went inside and started looking for witnesses to try to talk to Rodriguez, allegedly, according to this complaint, actually approached the officers and spoke to them and said, I did it, and said, I did it for Free Palestine. And one of the things that you learn in this, according to prosecutors, is that the suspect, was outside, was noticed by some witnesses who believed that he was acting suspiciously. But the idea that after carrying out the shooting, he stayed on the scene, didn't go anywhere, went inside the museum and waited for police to come in and try to talk to witnesses. Again, it really gives you a sense of that he was obviously wanted to be caught and wanted to make his statement, as he did to the officers who ended up arresting him at that scene. Pamela.
All right, Ellie, so what do you make of what Evan just laid out there and how that factors into the overall investigation?
Well, I think that's really important evidence that prosecutors are going to use, Pam. First of all, to show that there was an agenda here. There was a specific political agenda. He wanted to get caught. He wanted to have a chance to make the statements that we saw him make, and that will be relevant both to hate crimes and to potential terrorism charges. So I think that's a really important development. Also, if this individual is going to make some sort of mental incapacity defense down the line, I think that conduct, the sort of pre-planning and the calm, intentional surrender, will badly undermine any such defense.
I'm Steve Jensen. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office for the FBI. And I'd like to start by reiterating what Director Patel pushed out publicly, that the tragic murder of these two Israeli embassy employees outside of the Capitol Jewish Museum last night was both an act of terror and directed violence against the Jewish community. And it has the full and unwavering attention of the FBI. The FBI Washington Field Office, JTTF, has been in lockstep with MPD. And with the assistance of FBI offices across the country, we're continuing to investigate and contact the subject's associates, his family members, and coworkers. We are also executing search warrants for his electronic devices, reviewing his social media accounts, and all of his internet postings. Regarding some internet postings, we are aware of some writings that are purported to have been authored by this subject. We're actively investigating to determine both the authorship and the attribution of these writings, if they belong to this subject or not. I'd like to thank our partners in the U.S. Attorney's Office for bringing these significant federal charges in quick order within 24 hours or less than of the time of this incident. Make no mistake, this attack was targeted anti-Semitic violence, and it won't be tolerated. These significant charges are a step towards restoring justice for the victims and their families, but our work is not done. The FBI will continue to pursue all leads and use all available resources to investigate this attack. We join MPD in affirming that there is no ongoing threat to this community. And we're also seeking assistance from the public. We do have gaps in this investigation currently. We know the subject landed in the DC area on May 20th and that he was taken into custody on May 21st. We're asking the public, anybody who had contact with the subject, anybody who knew his whereabouts or where he was located during that gap of time, to contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or to submit an online tip at tips.fbi.gov.